Minutes, and we're going to talk a little bit about banking. It's only fitting that we talk about banking because at our first session in October, Victor talked about I was expecting to make $500 and now I'm only getting $300. What's going on? And you know, I've had always been traditionally paid in cash in Mexico. What are taxes? What's going on? I don't like to put my money in a bank account because the Mexican financial system wasn't as trusted. And so Pioneer Bank and 4 lovely ladies will be talking a little bit more about what that process is like for employers and some of the different creative solutions that community banks are able to offer as they navigate that space and to, again, provide value to our global workforce as we ensure a safe, welcoming, and stable environment. So I will introduce, let's see, on my other side here, we have Jennifer Mathistad, we have Jazmine Flores, Daisy Manriquez, and Sara Alberts joining us here today to share a little bit more about their different roles and some of the programs that they have in place. So, ladies, thank you for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me. So I am Jen Mathistad, and I am the VP of Retail Sales Supervision at Pioneer Bank. So that means that I get to supervise our tellers and our personal bankers. But I've been in lots of different roles since I've been with Pioneer Bank, 8 years tomorrow. And so I've been in mortgage lending, I've been in consumer lending, I helped with account openings, I've run teller transactions, so kind of a jack of all trades. So this is Sara Alberts. You want to do a little intro?
Sure. I am a personal banker in Mapleton at Pioneer Bank. I've been there since 2019. I am a associates in arts business concentration major since 2019. I do account openings, account changes, make sure the customer's all set up.
And Jazmine.
I'm Jazmine. I don't have a microphone, so hopefully you can hear me. I've been with Pioneer Bank for 5 years now. I have a total of 8 years in banking. I do a little bit of everything. I open accounts, I do a little bit of consumer lending, and I've had various positions within Pioneer Bank. So I'm a jack of all trades. I do a little bit of everything.
Very good. So one of the benefits of a consumer bank like Pioneer Bank is that we really focus on the relationships that we have with our customers. And whether that's a business or it's an individual, we want to know what is it you're after within your banking relationship? What are your needs and how can we help fulfill those needs? So we actually use a retail sales process to sit down with each individual or each business as they come to us. So that we can ask the questions, we can have the conversation, and we can understand how we can better serve you and how we can make this a mutually beneficial arrangement. And so as we move into more of a global workforce, as you guys are very well aware, that does come with some different changes in how that conversation sounds. And some of the things we have to worry about are some additional documentation pieces and things that we need to collect to ensure that our compliance department is happy. And we've got all of the boxes checked as we're working through our process. And so the next slide is going to give us some different, depending on their status, their resident status, some different areas or documentation that we would want to collect.
So up here you'll see just various status. For example, if you're a U.S. citizen, we'd obviously need your social security number, passport or state ID, your driver's license. Things are a little bit different if you're a resident alien. We would need a copy of your green card along with a passport, typically, or a state ID, whichever you do have. And then with the non-resident alien, we would need a passport or a state ID, and along with that, something that's a little bit different is we need to have a W-8 Ben form completed. This is a preview of what the W-8 Ben form looks like, and it could be a form just found out on the internet that we need completed at the time of account opening.
That's one of those documents that we find very helpful because we know that the employers come here for a short period of time in some cases, and they come here to work, and they want to work hard, they want to work as long of hours as they can, and that's what you guys want too. So our goal as a community bank is to make sure that we're making you happy as their employer. So gathering as much information ahead of time is very helpful. The W-8 BEN form is one of those forms that has name, address, ITIN or social security number included on there, and various other pieces of information in regards to your employee. So gathering that information and documentation from you ahead of time is an opportunity for us to be able to get some of the documentation completed and understand what we can do ahead of time to save you guys and your employees some time. Some different things to think about. So that kind of leads into open communication is always key for a good relationship, right? And so planning ahead. So we can do, don't tell my compliance officer, but almost anything, as long as we have a plan in place, right? So open communication. We've had employers come into our St. James location and say, I've got 25 employees coming in. We want to be able to open accounts. This is the time frame we've got them in. We have applied for the Social Security cards, but haven't received them yet. What are our options? So as a community bank, we have the option of being a little bit more flexible. We still have all the regulations and everything that we have to take care of, make sure that we're fitting. But as long as we have a plan in place and we've got the trust and the relationship between us and the employer, we're really willing to work with your employees and make sure that as soon as those Social Security cards come in, we get copies of those for each of your employees. And so I know that you guys would work with your banks very well with that. So time is valuable. We talked a little bit about that. Is an interpreter required? So some of our locations do have Spanish-speaking employees, bilingual employees, but not all of our locations. So if you do need an interpreter, we have the option. We could transport somebody from another location. Or maybe you have somebody available that could come in and interpret for us. Sarah, do you want to share your recent experience?
Sure. So we had a group of 4 girls that came in to set up an account. They brought their own interpreter. We ended up going into an office, all 4 of us, 2 bankers and 2 employers that they were hired for. And we sat there and we discussed what type of account was good for them. We helped them fill out their W-8 BEN, and we just set them up with the correct account. Afterwards, we kind of dispersed and had 2 and 2 with each personal banker, and the interpreter was there to ask the little questions that we had to keep going.
So another option that we would have is because of COVID, we realized how flexible we can really be as far as remote work, remote access, and things like that. Programs like DocuSign or Adobe Sign, those help us to be able to work remotely, which also means there's a potential for an opportunity for us to come to you. So let's say you've got 30 people coming in or 5 people coming in, and you're going to be working with them about benefits and Department of Labor issues or whatever it might be, OSHA requirements. If there is a day where you know all of your people are going to be in one spot and it's convenient for you, if we know ahead of time, there's opportunity for us to come with our equipment to be able to collect electronic signatures, collect and get those accounts set up so that tomorrow they can be on the job site. So tomorrow they can be working and making everybody happy. So another really cool thing that we can work for and make an opportunity there.
Another common question for us during account openings is money transfers. A lot of these employees are looking at sending money back to their countries. We have different options. Within Pioneer Bank, we offer the most common product, which is a wire. There is fees with the wire, but that is probably one of our most popular options at the bank. We also have reloadable travel cards, and those are pretty popular. The customer can stop into the bank. We would gather some information, and they'd be able to reload that card monthly or weekly as needed, and someone back in their country could have the card with the customer reloading it at the bank for a very minimal charge.
And the nice thing with that is it functions just like a debit card. So it's got an EMV chip, so it's secure. It's instant as far as any balance reloads onto that card. So there's a minimal fee for the purchase and a minimal fee anytime they add cash to it. But if we add cash in Mapleton, Minnesota, and maybe they're in Mexico City, their family that's using the card, it'll be instantaneous. They can also have options of doing it online. They can call in if they're on the job site and they want to add, they can't come into the bank, we can also help them over the phone with that as well. One other thing that's come to our attention is sometimes it's necessary to have multiple party accounts. And so what that means is you have your primary owner on the account, and then what if they're working long hours? What if they don't have, they work on Saturdays, so they can't get in before noon? How are they going to get there to cash their checks? How are they going to get there to get cash out? Things like that. Sometimes we found that there are authorized signers added to the account so that they can act on behalf of the owner. They can't cash their own payroll checks, they can't deposit their own payroll checks, but they have the option of acting on the behalf of that owner on the account. So if they're on the job site all day, maybe they're a job site foreman or somebody from the office staff can come to the bank, they're an authorized signer on their account, and then they would be able to act on behalf. They'd be able to cash their check, take cash out, different pieces like that. So something to think about. It's not necessarily anything that we're saying has to be done, but it certainly can work in their favor depending on the situation, the circumstances. And then debit card usage. So I'm not sure how many of you guys have ever had any fraud on your debit card, but one of the things that we need to make sure we're keeping in mind is typical patterns of behavior and usage of their debit cards. So if they are an employee who's here for only a certain period of time, we want to talk about, will you be making international purchases with your debit card? What are the average amounts that you're going to be using for that debit card purchase? If you are transferring back to your native country for a portion of the year, will you be using your debit card regularly while you're there, or will it remain dormant while you're not in the United States? So some of those things are conversations we have with the customers as well. So we can create that pattern of behavior and make notes on their debit cards so that if they're trying to make a purchase late in the evening, they're not going to get a fraud alert on their card. So we can make some of those notes and then help with that transaction go a little bit smoother too. Okay. What questions do you have? Yes.
So I know that when I open accounts for our foreign workers, they always tell them, make sure they close it before they go back, because it's really difficult for them to close their account from South America. Why is that? Why can't they close them online?
So we want to verify the identity of the person who's intending to close the account. Are there fees is there funds remaining in the account? That might be something that they would potentially look at. How are we going to transfer any remaining funds within that account to the new account, wherever they are. We also have a closing account checklist, so we want to go through and we want to figure out are there any additional ACHs or pending check items, and you may not use checks on these accounts, but so different things to think about as we're going through, if there's any automatic transfers that we just go through anytime we're closing an account. So I guess I probably haven't necessarily ever had anybody that we've turned away from opening or closing an account, but we probably would still go through those same steps, and then we would want to probably get a signature on that closing account checklist. And those are things we can do through DocuSign or Adobe Sign and really make it easily accessible regardless of where you're at.
It seems no matter how many times we tell them, now make sure you close your account before you go back, about half of them don't. And then,
yeah. And that brings up a really good point too about minimum balances. So depending on account types, you might have a minimum balance they'd want to keep in their account. So where you might want to transfer, I'll keep $100 here for spending money for the week. The rest is going to go back to help my family. Maybe you're in an account that requires $200 be left in there. So that's part of our conversation too when we're deciding what type of account. We keep that in mind on how they're using the account, how often they're making transfers out of the account, so that we really get them set up with the right type of account. Depending on if the employee is going to be coming back next year. So maybe they're only here for 7 or 8 months and then they come back, 4 months later. We have the option of leaving the account open during that time as well, and then that saves times next year. If they choose not to come back next year, we can deal with that at that point too. But good question. Yeah.
It's kind of on the same line, but we've had some employees that we've terminated that won't come back.
Okay.
And their accounts obviously are still active because we're receiving bank statements. Is
Okay.
there a way to take care of any of that?
Yes, I will give you my business card. And yep, absolutely. So yeah, so perfect example. So if there are funds remaining in the account, we'll take a look at how much is remaining, and then we can look at communication and if there's a way for us to be able to communicate with that person, we'll certainly try to do that. If we absolutely have no reason to think that they're going to come back, we probably would leave the account on a dormant status, which means that it's better protected if nobody anticipates using it. But then it also, after a certain period of time, would go back to the state of Minnesota as unclaimed property. And then the funds would sit there if we can't figure out a way to get it to them.
I would just like to stop keeping bank statements.
Yeah. Yep. What other questions? Yeah.
Is there a way for a business to make a relationship with the bank that's closest to them, even if their employee doesn't have an account with you, that they can cash that check? Because often they're not looking to have a big account. They just want to get their money and they're not paid in cash, they're paid in check. But
Yeah. Props to this front row. I mean, you guys really showed up today. So great question. Yes, absolutely. So if you bank with Pioneer Bank and your payroll checks are written on Pioneer Bank, we will cash those checks for your employees, and they don't have to have an account with us. We would collect identification from them. It has to be current ID, and we would collect a fingerprint so that we've got all of that documentation. If the check isn't written on a Pioneer Bank account, we would recommend they go to wherever the check is written on. So whichever bank the payroll account is from. You could check with other banks to see if they would be willing to cash. But then again, it comes down to relationship. So we've got a situation where we have a part of a relationship with an employer. We're continuing to work through and hoping to get the full relationship, but during that time period where we're earning their trust and we're working together, we're willing to make an exception. We have some of their accounts, we're working on getting them all, and we'll work on that communication and that willingness to cash those payroll checks even if they're not on us. Yeah. Okay. Yes?
I'm curious about with international transfers, how your services are different from like Western Union.
Yeah, so it's just a different type of transfer. So Western Union was also one that we had talked about and is widely used. There's another version of, sounds similar to Western Union. I've never used it myself. But Daisy, who was supposed to be here with us, was informing us she's used Zoom, which is actually XOOM, to transfer money to her family down in Mexico. And very similar, where you pick a window where your family member or your friend is going to be going to pick up that money. You identify which window it is, you get their name exactly as it is on the identification that they're going to be using, and then it's as easy as you give them the money at this window and it shows up at that window instantaneous as well. So those are a couple of different options. The wire transfer is something that's also instant, but there are fees associated with the wire transfer as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.